City of Sharonville. We're going to open this evening with a public hearing. Mr. Creech?
Good evening, City Council. This item is advertised as a public hearing at Ordinance 2022-76. It's a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Came to you in the form of Resolution 2203. It's to amend the Planning and Zoning Code to create a section 111309 entitled Parking, Open Storage of Supplies, Materials, and Equipment, and the Accumulation of Waste Prohibited. So I just wanted to go back a little bit. So what you see here, this is a snapshot of a section from our old code that we recently adopted. And just pay particular attention to that underlined section there, because that's really what we're addressing. It reads, or other equipment and supplies. So that particular section was removed from the old code. And that, just those few words there were actually used by our office, by the inspector, to achieve compliance for various violations, which I'll show you just a few photographs in a moment, of the accumulation of construction material, debris, all sorts of things that accumulate that we routinely get complaints about, especially in residential areas. So we realized that that was taken out, went to the Planning Commission. We discussed it at a study session back in October, and then we created a new section to add to the zoning code. The Planning Commission approved that back in November. And you have before you the final ordinance. So, and this is the proposed new section. So section A there is essentially the same as what we had before in the previous section. It's almost verbatim. But sections B and C, we've added that additional language there. So just to briefly flip back. So it says, or other equipment and supplies. That's what it previously said. So sections B and C have really kind of fleshed this out, if you will. It's added a lot of detail of the types of things and materials that are stored on properties that we typically get complaints about. And I'm sure you've probably heard some of these too. So we've added a lot of detail, and I won't read all of this, but it talks about trailers, vehicle chassis, parts, tires, household appliances, lumber, rags, stoves, furniture, waste material. So it's really added a lot of detail. And it makes it clearer for both the inspector and the offending party to understand what the violation is. Takes out a lot of the guesswork. So I just wanted to just run through just a couple slides here just to point out a couple things. So you can see here I've just highlighted some things, some boxes that just accumulate on properties and they stay there for some time. We get complaints about these. I think that there on the right, that is the inner tube for a large tire that was deflated. Here there's just simply a stack of pallets that someone may cut up for firewood uses, a tarp that's been laying there for some time, construction materials left on a driveway, and then you'll see some fence materials back in the back corner of that other photograph there. So really it just adds a lot of detail. And the one thing I did want to point out is that all these photos, you know, these things happen. When they happen, we get complaints. Sometimes these violations have been literally on the ground for maybe weeks or even a month before someone finally gets on the phone and makes a call about it, especially if it's in the backyard, so we don't really see it. So, and there is a process that we go through to achieve compliance, so it's not something that happens automatically. So with that, like I said, the Planning Commission reviewed or discussed this back in October. That final amendment was presented to the Planning Commission. They approved it by way of that resolution in November 9th, and we did discuss this at the Law Committee in some detail back on December 2nd. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Is there anyone here in the public that would like to speak on this? No questions from you guys? Okay, thank you very much. And that will conclude the public hearing. Thank you. And now we will go ahead and call tonight's council meeting to order. If everyone would please stand, we're going to have a moment of silent prayer, And then I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can all be seated. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Coulter?
Here.
Mr. Levitt?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. And Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Approval of minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to our January 10th, 2023 minutes that were sent out? Seeing none, those stand as written and distributed, and we'll go into reports and communication. Mayor Hardman.
Mayor's Court totals will be provided to the clerk this evening for addition to the minutes. I had the pleasure with Ms. Hoppy and Mr. Lucas to welcome Congressman Warren Davison to Sharonville a couple of weeks ago. We took him a little tour of our wonderful police station and the great work we did up there and what our great public safety services do here in Sharonville. So it was a pleasure to welcome him to the city a couple of weeks ago to do that. Other than that, I have nothing else to report this evening.
Are there any questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move to Safety Service Director.
Thank you. Not to steal any of Elena's thunder later, but in case she wasn't going to mention, which I don't know if she was, Adesso Coffee is open. They're having their ribbon cutting Saturday, 9 and 10, Elena?
Yes, at 9 o'clock.
At 9
At
o'clock.
9.
So wonderful addition to our downtown region, and they had a soft opening this past weekend. They're open yet this week, but their official grand opening, I guess, will be Saturday from 9 to 2. Also on their Facebook page, it looks like they have their first music act also happening Saturday at 4 o'clock as well, some Latin type of some music. So.
Well, party in Sharonville.
Yeah, exactly. Second, before we get into the legislation, council's aware of this, but in case the public is wondering what is being installed throughout our community, at 12 different locations, flock license plate readers that look like this, basically a pole with a solar panel on top with a camera. These are license plate readers that many agencies throughout the state and our region use, and throughout the country use, for that matter, that it's basically a law enforcement tool that's used to track down alleged lawbreakers and to gather information on vehicles of interest, in short. So 12 different locations throughout the city. Installation is occurring as we speak. So moving into the legislation this evening, Ordinance 2022-76 was the topic of John's public hearing earlier. Ordinance 2023-07, John, I don't know if you want to talk about it all. It's just a first reading, but it's a rezoning request. It's just, if you want to say anything about that while you're here?
So yes, this is, Planning Commission has reviewed and approved this. This will be coming to City Council as a resolution for approval. I think it is at the last meeting in February. It'll be a public hearing here for rezoning. It's for a PUD and a preliminary plan approval for an expansion of the Enclave Apartments onto some adjacent vacant property that abuts their property and also fronts onto Houck Road.
Ordinance 2023-08, Jesse's here tonight to talk about IT stuff that is way over my head.
Try not to get down in the weeds too much with the IT stuff, but essentially, this ordinance is requesting council authorization to pursue a formal bid process to seek competitive IT telecommunications and network services. So we're talking about internet service and network connectivity, not only to this building, but in between all city sites. So we're talking about PD, all the fire stations, convention center, community center, tax department. The reason for this is we have a number of circuits that connect all these sites together. I call them legacy circuits. They've kind of been added on over the years, over many years, and they're not cohesive. So the mixture and variety of these circuits, there's different speed, different performance, different degrees of reliability, and much different costs. They've never really been aggressively negotiated. So we're interested in consolidating all these into one vendor that can provide us high-quality service that really meets the needs that we have from an IT perspective at keeping all the sites linked together and negotiating a rate that's going to be a cost savings to the city as well. So any specific questions, I can get into as much detail as you like with that.
I said
Coulter?
one question. So is that just for the services, or is that inclusive of any hardware change that may need to take place because of the different vendor?
That's a good question. There's no hardware changes anticipated that weren't already either budgeted for or in place. This is basically the vendor is going to come in and drop in whatever equipment's needed for this, this migration of circuits to happen. So no, we're not going to have to invest any new capital dollars.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Scott and Michael are both here this evening for ordinance 2023-09E, dealing with a variety of items, including a potential late delivery request.
Yeah, good evening. I'll start with kind of the original two aspects of the ordinance. This was to appropriate $20,000 for the 401 capital to address some change orders on the elevator replacement going out at the community center and some potential contingency beyond that. It also authorized the safety service director to enter into a agreement for master plan services on Gower Park. From the version that went out over the weekend, we made a couple of corrections in the whereas related to the master plan, making master plan 2 words instead of 1, and then also there was a bad reference there to Gorman Park instead of Gower Park, so those were corrected. I've also added a late delivery request for the aspect of additional appropriations in the 607 Convention Center Expansion Fund. We talked about this in November and December as we were working on the 2023 budget, trying to dial in what would be the unencumbered balance of the 607 fund. We knew kind of a little bit of a wave of change orders were kind of coming right there around year end. I kind of thought that they would fall a little bit in 22 and a little bit in 23. So we put just a nominal amount of appropriations in the 2023 budget, about $250,000 for the 607 fund. The actual unencumbered balance ended up being $1,083,000 and change. And that's also kind of because none of the change orders fell into 2022. They all fell into January 2023. So we have a larger balance than I expected in December, but it also means we need this money here at the end of January and not in February or March like I kind of was hoping or thinking.
Okay,
So if you would consider that for late delivery.
not a problem.
Thanks.
And then Michael's here for the last item, or resolution 2023-R01.
Good evening. Yes, so this resolution essentially has become an annual resolution as we continue to seek additional funding. This is a grant request, not a request, an application request through ODNR's Nature Works program. We are seeking additional funding through ODNR grant program for the replacement of some equipment at Gower Park, namely the dinosaur, as it's referred to. I know you guys had some, I believe, some Boy Scouts
Yes.
that were here recently and talked to you about the dinosaur. So we've got a lot of feedback from the community about, the great new equipment we've replaced with Gower Tower, the new swings, everything else has been fantastic. And the dinosaur is obviously starting to show its age, and we're hoping to replace it with something fun, exciting, age-appropriate, and we're hoping to get some additional funding, and we're going to apply for that now. It's due by June 1st, and we're hoping to get lucky to receive some.
Good. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And that also was just a first reading
Yeah.
this evening, since Michael was here. That's it for the legislation.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lucas? Seeing none, we'll move on. I just wanted to, in case you haven't seen on Facebook, Remind your wives, gentlemen, Sue, maybe we should hook up and go. It's Galantine, and I'm sure that our economic development guru has had a hand in this, because it speaks to volumes of two of our small businesses working together this coming Saturday. From, I think it's 3 to 6, you can go to Firecracker Bakery. I've got it up here. You can go to Firecracker Bakery and sip wine, eat cookies, and have charcuterie, because our new charcuterie ladies are also partnering with them. So if you are so inclined, send your wives and your credit card, because there are things to buy. And that's all I have, and we'll move on to Mrs. Buhite.
Thanks. There were 2 new liquor licenses returned, and that was, one was for Arcade Legacy and one was for Adesso Coffee, and those were signed and returned.
Perfect, thank you. Auditor, Mr. Cunningham.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give sort of a year in review the best I can. I'm going to spell out a few facts. I'm going to call them fun facts, because that's kind of my attempt to make it fun, and I know that everybody thinks it's fun. These numbers are before any adjustments would have been made after the reports were given to us. But fun fact number 1, we spent only 90% of what we budgeted to spend in the general fund in 2022. Fun fact number 2, that left an unencumbered balance in our general fund of roughly $2.4 million. Number 3, we spent only 92% of what we budgeted in the fire fund. And number 4, that left an unencumbered balance of roughly $886,000. Fun fact number 5, we made a total of $3.6 million, almost $3.7 in transfers in December, which 3.4 of that was capital improvements. We also made some transfers for facility improvements and separation benefits. And fun fact number 6, we made some fire fund adjustments. We made $1.5 million transfer from 230 to 430, which is fire equipment, and $75,000 to fire separation benefits. So those are that's basically a year in review of all the transfers and what we left sitting there in 2022. And those transfers were made not only because we spent less than what we thought we would or we budgeted, but we also received more than what we thought, and I'm going to let Kurt Irie talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Some of the numbers here, continuing with the end of the year report. The tax report obviously is on file here, but in our last report, I think we only had through November 30th, so this report details everything through December 2022, and it shows that our collections receipts were up 6.71% over the year before, and actually up quite significantly compared to the pre-COVID 2019 numbers. And another very positive sign, the lodging tax was up 27.6% year-to-date. And in keeping with Ed's fun facts, I think we're on number 9, or maybe number 8 here, but I'll just add on to that just to say that the general fund receipts were at 124% of what we estimated they would be. So that's just, again, another good sign that the receipts were very strong last year. So
Great.
that's my report.
Thank you.
Yep.
I like your fun facts.
Thank you. Unless anyone has questions, I don't have anything to report. No fun facts, sorry.
No fun facts.
Okay, so Okay. So, yeah, I was hired May 23rd, 2022. And so the Economic Development Department consists of me and my intern, who I hired him October. And he'll be with us. He's committed to stay until May 31st. But he's very interested. He's a freshman right now, so just exploring different types of careers. So he doesn't want to stay in city government forever. So what is economic development? I like to say that it's making the city of Sharonville a great place to live, work, and play. And how do I spend my time? So I spend a large majority, I'd say 20%, on incentive administration and compliance. And then the rest, it's pretty much divvied up between business retention, business attraction, networking and meetings, real estate development, administration, because I am just a department of one, so I do a lot of my own administration, grand openings and ribbon cuttings, writing press releases for new businesses, different types of marketing and communications, small business activities, and then some special event planning. And then I'll go into those further. So with BRE visits, I consistently invite Ready Cincinnati and Alloy Development to attend any local business visits. And I find that, with three heads at the table, a lot of times if it's something that I haven't thought of, they're thinking of, and I just find that it makes for a better meeting. And we always tell businesses that you might not have a reason to meet with us now, but let's go ahead and meet and establish a relationship and share our contact information so that should a need should arise in the future, you know how to get a hold of us. And we go into the different types of incentives and resources that each entity can provide. And so some of the regional partners, I mentioned Alloy, they rebranded from HCDC last year, as well as Northern Cincinnati. They had rebranded from Sharonville Chamber. And we hold a seat on the board for both Ready Cincinnati and the Chamber. Yeah, I administer two business alliances, the Northern Lights District, which is comprised of all businesses and property owners in the Northern Lights District area, to just stay on task and focused at redeveloping the area. And so I decided to schedule quarterly meetings and keep it consistent with the same place, date, and time. So as you can see, those will be in March, June, September, and December. And then the Small Business Alliance meetings, I know in the past they were held monthly, and I decided to move that to quarterly just because the one that I did have last year in 2022 was not heavily attended. So I thought by just doing it quarterly, maybe that would push more people to go. But I like to say that I have them for networking, collaboration, and cross-promotion. And so also because there wasn't a great attendance last year, I tried to, with the marketing, to just make it really fun and as non-pretentious as possible. So you can see that in the marketing, with Valentine's Day, pizza party. But again, we're having those quarterly, the third Thursday at 8:30 a.m. And so the next one coming up is Thursday, February 16th. So I have invited all of you to attend if you're able to. It'll be at 8:30 in the morning already. Then for new business assistants, I always offer to do a press release or assist with a ribbon cutting or grand opening. Either I or Anna will a lot of times from the mayor's office do a welcoming. Next week we're planning to go out to some of the newer businesses and just do a proper welcoming. And then as well as any type of social media exposure. And so you'll see I put the Charcuterie Creations and Adesso press releases. And the Adesso one, the Cincinnati Business Courier reached out to me, so we should be seeing something in the news about Adesso. Here's some of the pictures of the ribbon cuttings and grand openings from last year. And then with business development, I respond to inquiries. A lot of times I'll just get calls interested in the Sharonville economy, or is there any land, which is no. or just help with site selection. And then through Ready Cincinnati and Jobs Ohio, we'll a lot of times get leads. It'll just be, it's this type of industry, this many jobs, this is the utility requirements, land requirements. But a lot of times I don't have anything to submit just because we are low on inventory here in Sharonville. And then this past year, I expanded the community entertainment district that we had at the Northern Lights District to come down Sharon Road and encompass the Loop area. And so with the D5J, we were credited with 15 available liquor licenses, and only 4 were being used in the Northern Lights area. So expanding that to the Loop opened it up to Adesso Coffee, Charcuterie, and then Rockefeller should be applying soon. And I just wanted to make note, what Terry's here, it's really important when we're getting a license, if they're located in the D5J to kind of, or in the SED, to kind of steer them towards the D5J, because then that allows everyone outside of that area to take advantage of the other types. And then the city of Sharonville has 3 different types of incentives. We have a CRA, which is real estate tax abatement, and it will be 100% for anywhere from 1 to 15 years. We have a job creation incentive grant, which is intended for growth of 15 or more employees, anywhere from 3 to 6% rebate back on income taxes paid for 3 to 6 years. And then the small business facade improvement grant, which is a reimbursable grant up to $10,000. So here's a map of our CRA area. We have 4 different CRA areas. And these are the CRAs that I had granted in 2022. For Phelan Development, they're building a 112,000 square foot speculative warehouse on Chesterdale Road. That's currently being marketed for pre-lease by square foot commercial. And then UDF had demolished their gas station on the corner of Mosteller and Crescentville, and they'll be rebuilding that. And then job creation incentive grants, granted last year. Jim administered the workhorse group before I came here, and then I administered Advanced Transportation Solutions in Brighton True Edge. So ATS, they brought 121 jobs here to Sharonville, and then Brighton grew theirs by 21. And then here's a list of all the small business facade grants that I granted last year. And I just have some before and after pictures to show you how successful the program is. And then there is a good amount of incentive compliance that comes with these incentives. So we track them locally per the agreement. Based on the agreement, there's they'll have to be in business for so long, have to stay in Sharonville for so long, or else we would claw back that incentive. There's different state reporting. Tax Incentive Review Council, which Alloy Development handles ours, and we attend that. There's a Housing Council, which we just met for our annual meeting, and then there's school sharing payments to be calculated. Some of the marketing, I've tried to put a page in the hometown guide, and for the winter edition, I did an annual review. For the upcoming spring edition, I'm doing a business spotlight, and I'd like to do that again for summer and fall. And my idea for summer is to do kind of a window of opportunity. We have several window companies here to maybe highlight each one of those. And then participated in Christmas on the Loop with the business open house. And then working now on the business appreciation breakfast, which is Thursday, March 16th at 8 a.m. And Jim Downton has graciously volunteered to give an update on the convention center. I thought it would be, just by the attendance there, it'd be a good way to market our expansion and try to get some bookings. And then we'll also have FC Cincinnati back for an update. So I kind of went with a soccer theme for the marketing here. And then there's the annual report, which I placed on each one of your cafeterias beforehand, and I'll be using this at the, handing it out at the Business Appreciation Breakfast, using it on social media, on our website, and any type of city marketing. I'll also send some to the larger businesses in Sharonville. And some of my goals for this year, I'll be working on a new website, which the URL will be choosesharonville.com. And with the city's website, you know, it's branded for the city, whereas economic development has a certain other branding. So I just wanted a place where I could showcase all of the news, press releases, our annual report, just all the good news coming out of Sharonville, a place to really showcase that. And so that is underway right now. I'll also be looking to increase my BRE visits, getting out in the community more, meeting more businesses, and hopefully more focus on real estate development. So, thank you. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, January 11th, we held a meeting of the Planning Commission. There was no Board of Zoning Appeals in January. And John has already talked about the rezoning request that we've had from Enclave. And just a quick summary here that stood out to me was they currently have 150 units there. There's only 5 of those units that are open. And at least at the time they made their presentation, and so this will allow them to add 28 new units there. And the Planning Commission was very much in favor of that and thought it fit well with the plan for Houck Road. And so we'll get to hear more about that for a couple more readings. The next meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission will be on February the 8th at 6:30.
Thank you. Good evening. Our next meeting is on Wednesday, February 8th as well, at 4 p.m. in the conference room in the back, but no report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Oversight, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. The next Budget and Finance meeting will be at 6 p.m. on April the 11th in the Administrative Conference Room, and I will send out meeting invites for that, and no report. And then for Project Oversight, no report also, but our next Project Oversight meeting will be March 28th. Make sure I'm in the right month. March 28th at 6 p.m. in the Administrative Conference Room. Thank you.
Thank you. Honored citizens, Mrs. Knight.
It's kind of funny, because tonight, I'd like to honor all the small businesses of Sharonville. We have so many new businesses coming to Sharonville, not to mention some of also our older ones that have been here for many, many years. Mr. Pugh, he has the hair salon, it's been here forever too. And then our new businesses that Elena has talked about. So I just want to say welcome to our new businesses, and hopefully people will explore them.
The next Law and Public Safety Committee meeting will be February 7th, 4 p.m. at the Administrative Conference Room. Thank you.
Okay. This is the third reading of ordinance 2022-76, approving the recommendation of Planning Commission to adopt Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1113.09.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-76? So moved by Mr. Lovett, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-76 has been approved.
New business?
This is just a first reading of ordinance 2023-07, rezoning property located along the north side of Hawk Road and along the east side of Runyon Drive, from general business to planned unit development, and approving the preliminary site development plan. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2023-08E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to sign a contract with the lowest and best bidder on a contract for information technology and telecommunications services and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-08E? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Coulter. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2023-08 has been approved. First and only reading of ordinance 2023-09E, amending 2023 appropriations for the 401 Capital Fund and authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract for Gower Park Master Plan.
Is there a motion for ordinance 2023-09E? So moved by Mrs. Knight, second by Mr. Lovett. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt? Ordinance 2023-09 has been approved. And lastly, first reading of Resolution 2023-R01, resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to submit an application for a NatureWorks grant through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, this is last chance. Residents that wish to be heard this evening? None of you. Okay, are there any other matters? Mrs. Knight?
I would personally like to wish my mother a 93rd birthday. It was last week, and she's doing great. And just so if anybody didn't know, she was the original owner of the root beer stand, which at that time was Ann W. Root Beer. So I just want everybody to know she's doing well. And one other point, Eric is still making the chili the way my grandmother and her made it back in '57. And she has it a lot, and she says it tastes exactly the same. So just so you know.
I hope they never change it. Thank you. Any other matters? Is there a motion for adjournment? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Tankersley. All those in favor, yes? Yes. Those opposed, no, and we do stand adjourned.